Okay, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for coming today. I am Investigator Ileana Corrales.
I'm Investigator Ron Cook.
Again, thank you for coming today and joining us as we kick off our 2023 Ethics Week. We are looking forward to once again sharing a little bit more insight as to how BEGA conducts investigations and also advancing BEGA's mission to a more ethical DC government. Okay, so we're going to get started with the presentation. Go ahead.
So, for those of you who don't know, we are the DC Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Office. We monitor and enforce all violations of the Code of Conduct over DC government. We have jurisdiction over all of the district agencies, including the elected officials, certain legislative and executive branch employees, and members of independent boards and commissions. So basically, we cover just about everybody in DC government, including the ANCs as well. We're still working to expand our coverage on ANCs. I know a few people on here might have questions. I see a few names that are familiar who have asked questions previously about ANCs. So we are trying to get some of that jurisdiction expanded. Next slide. What do we investigate? So, like I said, we investigate all violations of the Code of Conduct, any allegations that an individual may come forth with from agencies or outside of DC government agencies with allegations concerning any District of Columbia government employee. We review all of those complaints that come in. At the beginning, they're just allegations, but that's mainly what we investigate. Anything for the DPM, Chapter 18, Code of Conduct, all of those violations and codes that are listed in Chapter 18 is what we look at mainly. We coordinate with other agencies, OIG, OAG, MPD, USAO, and the FBI. And we've also coordinated with other agencies that are not law enforcement in regards to helping assist us with investigations.
Okay. Keep on mute. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the life cycle of a BEGA investigation.
You want me?
Ron, can you please mute?
I am mute.
Okay. No. Okay, so again, I'm going to talk about the life cycle of a BEGA investigation, and we'll go into more details in the presentation about what this all entails. So intake starts with a complaint, either in person through the BEGA mailbox, emailed over to us, a hotline phone call, or from our online portal complaint form. Complaints are then reviewed and management assigns it to a team. We have 3 teams made up of an investigator and an attorney here at BEGA. The matter is then determined if it's going to be an undocketed matter. Well, basically all of our matters are considered investigations. It's either going to be a preliminary or a formal investigation. And that decision comes about from the director and the team that has been assigned the matter. Then we move on to our investigation. We conduct the investigation. The investigative team walks through does the entire investigation and then takes their findings to the director, which then they determine if it's going to be a dismissal, informal admonition, negotiated disposition, or a notice of violation as well. It could also be a referral to another agency like the OIG or DCHR, for example. Okay, so how do I submit a BEGA complaint? You can do it in person. We don't really have too many of those nowadays. We'll get into a little bit of that later on, but you still have the option of coming into our office and filing a complaint. Once you file a complaint in person, an investigator will meet with you. You also have the option of mailing in a complaint, hard copy. Hard copy complaints are always welcome as well. And sometimes we receive sworn complaints. There is also the ability to submit one through the web portal or via email. For the web portal, you just go to BEGA website and then you'll click on submit a complaint and it'll take you straight to the complaint form. And you can always just email it to bega@dc.gov and it will. Kevin, can you please go back to the previous slide? Okay, you also have the option of calling the hot phone, 202-535-1002, and submitting a complaint through there. And speaking to an investigator or an attorney as well. Next.
Okay, so these are the different types of case types that we have. We have a formal investigation, which is allegations received in a sworn complaint. As Ileana said, we don't really receive a lot of those. We haven't received many this year, so that has kind of slowed down over the recent years. Other formal cases would be those referred from another law enforcement agency, MPD, OIG, OAG. We make those cases formal, and those formal cases, once they come in and we take a look at them and kind of comb through the allegations and things of that nature and see what we actually need, we get everything together to present that case to our board within a time period of 14 days. So we also have preliminary investigations. So when the complaints come in, as you saw in the process on the previous slide, we take a look at everything, kind of comb through it, determine if it has any merit or not, switch that complaint over to a preliminary. In the preliminary, we kind of get everything started. It's kind of like a fact-finding stage. So we're just trying to gather evidence to make sure that we have everything that we need before we actually get started on. We also have undocketed cases, which is not listed here. So undocketed cases that come in, we'll take a look at the undocketed cases. We'll meet on them during our investigation meeting, kind of bounce ideas off of each other and give our opinions on it, and determine if the case actually has any merit or not, or if it doesn't fall within the jurisdiction enforcement area of our office. So we'll make those undocketed cases, and then we'll end up either dismissing those, or if we determine that another agency has a better shot at actually finding out something about the case, we usually refer it to those other agencies for review. Then we also have regulatory matters. Those are more for FDS and lobbyist individuals. So those are basically the 4 types of cases that we have and that we review in our office. Go to the next slide. Yeah, I know. What happened? Go to the next slide. Okay.
Okay, so planning the investigation. So no matter what type of investigation BEGA is about to undertake, careful planning at the onset is essential for a thorough, efficient, and effective investigation. So preparing an investigation plan by the team is very helpful. It serves as a blueprint as to what we are going to do, more like a roadmap. So let's see here. So in our investigation plan, we will determine who it is that we're going to interview, what order we're going to follow, the topics that we're going to cover with each witness, which documents and records we need to determine that a violation has occurred, and any outside resources or any outside resources that we can use to further our investigation. We also address any problems that could arise during the investigation. I'll show you guys a investigative plan, something similar to what we usually do here at the office. let's see. So an investigation plan, it should require, it's like I said, it's a roadmap for the investigation. The length of the plan will depend on the scope of the investigation, the volume and the complexity of the issues under investigation. The next slide, please. Okay, so I know the font is a little small, but so this is an investigative plan. This is a sample one that we do here at the office. So for example, when we're meeting with our team members, when the team is meeting for the first time and going over the complaint, they'll draft one up. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but some investigators do a template like this. For example, you'll list in there the date that you received the matter, the date that it was initiated, meaning the date that it was assigned to your team, the respondent, the agency, the matter number, the allegations. For example, here we have a fictitious individual by the name of Tyrell Jones. The allegation in this complaint was that TJ owns BEGA Production, a company that was awarded a contract with the Department of Buildings. So that is the allegation. So he's an employee and he was awarded a contract with the Department of Buildings for his company, BEGA Productions. The relevant statutes, potential violations is here, conflict of interest. The investigation will seek to determine if TJ is a company owner, TJ engaged in business transactions on the company's behalf. The business transaction was with another entity. TJ oversaw the business and the program at his agency that he has a contract with. TJ or immediate family member has a personal interest in that entity, or that TJ failed to disclose to his superiors that he owned the company that applied for the contract. So this is what we will seek to determine throughout our investigation. Potential witnesses, Ashley Cooks, the director, and also Maurice Eccles, the deputy director. Let's see, possible evidence. So list of documents and records to be obtained throughout our investigation. Procurement documents, so any documents coming from OCP or the agency, public business entity search, and respondents, DC government email records. So that, that's a good start for this type of complaint. Risk to the investigation. So let's say he no longer works here at BEGA, okay, for DC government. So there is a risk for the investigation. It could be that since he separated in July 2023, it could result in uncooperative behavior. So these are things that we're trying to keep in mind as we conduct this investigation. And so a sample action plan that could come about from this investigation would be, we would interview the complainant, if there is one, something there isn't one. We would collect and review OCP documents, conduct open source and clear research. Those are resources that we use. Interview the contract administrator. That would be a good place to start. Collect and review the business documents. Interview the respondent, which is our subject. And then we will complete all of the relevant memos and documents that need to be uploaded into our system that would then get presented to the director to determine if a violation has occurred. So this is just a sample one. Sometimes it's not as detailed, but sometimes it is. Next.
Okay, some of the investigative techniques that we use. So we are the investigators here at BEGA, we're fact finders. The complaints that we get that come in, they're all allegations from the onset. We try not to condemn anybody from the beginning, just basically looking at the complaint. Nobody's actually guilty until we've actually went through the case and determined and looked over the evidence and made a determination on whether or not the facts in the complaint are actually accurate and true. We try to keep open communication with the complainant. We try to get all of the information that we can from the complainant to make a positive determination on the complaint. We keep an open line of communication with the respondent, also with the witnesses. We are very direct and upfront with them. We don't disclose everything involved in the investigation to witnesses because we try to keep it as tight as possible. So we don't want everybody in the agency talking about it. So we're very particular about who we speak with. And we try to keep the information in the investigation is kind of tight. So we always, in interviewing individuals, we always let them know that, it's a confidential matter. We ask them, please don't share the information that we've discussed in these interviews. But, of course, in working in DC government, our agency wouldn't exist if everybody followed the rules. So we do have individuals that we end up talking to that actually go back and, discuss things that we've talked about in interviews with them. And then we have adverse action if we find out that's actually happening. We got to double back and end up speaking to that person and possibly getting them charged as well. We always try to take a non-confrontational approach. When individuals are filing complaints and, they kind of, from my experience, they kind of take it personal. So they're very emotional when they file complaints. So we have individuals who come into the office, like Ileana stated earlier, since COVID has started, we haven't had a lot of individuals come in. But when we follow up with the individuals who file complaints and we talk to them, they're very upset and very passionate about the stuff that they're filing. So they can come in and they can be pretty abrasive when you talk to them on the phone, and they're yelling and screaming. So we try to be non-confrontational and try to break that down. So my thing is, I kind of talk to everybody, in a calm manner. I let them know that I'm actually here to help. I'm not blaming anybody for anything. So in building that rapport, and I kind of, just kind of get the question and just kind of calm the situation down to the point where it's just like we're just having a normal conversation. And usually, if you take that approach with confrontational individuals in DC government, it usually works. I've had a great deal of success with that, as well as, everybody else in our office. I don't think we've had any serious issues with individuals coming in who are confrontational. We've always been able to get a nice grasp on those kind of situations. So I think that's worked. The type matters. We got complainant, witness, and respondent types. Like I said, the complainant is the individual who submits the complaint. It could be an individual from outside of DC government. It could be the general counsel from another agency. It could be a regular employee from an agency submitting a complaint on another employee that works in their division. It could be an employee submitting a complaint against the supervisor or other people. It could be a resident of the district, a resident of any of the surrounding states. So we have those individuals. We got witnesses. A witness can be anybody. If we get to a point in an investigation that we feel like some of the information that we need comes from, whatever witness we feel like we need to tap into, we're going to actually reach out to that person. Like I said, we'll try to keep it tight and not reach out to too many people. So with the investigative plan that Ileana showed you, it'll be pretty detailed of who we're going to reach out to and kind of keep that kind of close. Then the respondent. The respondent is basically the subject, just like in a criminal matter. So most of those, 9 times out of 10, a respondent will be a district government employee unless the agency has already taken action against that individual and they've decided to leave. And at that point, we're still trying to get in contact with them, even though they've left DC government. So in those interviews, we kind of handle all of those interviews the same way. So just taking a little different techniques to kind of work through them. Sometimes they can be difficult. So in the interviewing part, we use open-ended questions. We usually stick to the 5W and H method: who, what, where, when, how, and why. So we kind of stick to that. And the object of our interviews is basically to obtain information that's accurate and reliable. We know we've had complaints that are pretty detailed, but after we look at them over a certain period of time, we've determined that some of those complaints, have a lot of false allegations in them. The majority of them are actually true and accurate, but we do have complaints that we get, like I said, of the individuals who are actually very passionate about what they submit, even though it's at sometimes it might not be true. They'll write it to the point where you think it's true. So I think going through the interviews and talking to the complainant maybe more than once, because the first time you talk to the complainant, they might be a little upset. So if you're able to talk to them the second time, maybe they've calmed down at that point. So we definitely try to talk to the complainant first to get the majority of the details. They'll submit something online. It won't have a lot of details in it, so we'll double back and talk to the complainant. And then the witnesses to try to verify everything. So that's basically the investigative techniques that we use going through the interviewing process. Like I said, just we just try to make it like it's a normal conversation. I feel like that's the best way to be able to pull information out of DC government employees. So go on to the next slide.
Okay, so these are the research methods that we use when we are conducting our investigations. Let's see here. So conducting research allows us to speak more confidently about different elements in our investigations. So these are the resources that we use in order to become more knowledgeable with the people, with the places, with the allegations, with their offices, their specific role in that office, even their manager and the director that they report to. We want to make sure that we know as much about our subject and everything else that surrounds the subject. Their tour duty, if they work at night or during the day. So all that stuff that comes about from researching in the onset of the investigation. So we use resources like PeopleSoft, Clear, LexisNexis, TLO to run background checks to see who they're related to see if there is a business that maybe I didn't find on DLCP's website that they might be associated to. Email records tell us a lot about folks. It tells us what their personal emails are. There's been hundreds of times that I've gotten someone's personal email because they email a lot of documents to themselves, or they email themselves from their Gmail or Yahoo account. We also use open source. Open source is basically available to anyone. It's Google, LinkedIn, social media, Facebook, as well as agency. Agencies serve as our resources because they hold a lot of records in their agency. And let's see. Yeah, so agencies serve as a major resource. The folks in the agencies serve as major resources. The folks in their HR departments, the contract administrator, people like that. So that's all part of our research. We prioritize and focus on our reputable resources like Clear, for example. That is something that our agency uses a lot. The information is constantly being updated. So it's going to be one of our most reputable and reliable resources that we have here at BEGA. Let's see. So again, using these various methods helps our credibility and therefore can assist us in various phases of our investigations. When you know what you're talking about in front of a witness or a respondent, they're more likely to tell you what happened. So it's a great way for us to be informed and therefore, appearing credible in front of whoever it is that we're talking to. Next.
Okay, so once we went through the steps of completing the investigation, we get to our disposition stage. So these are actually a list of the things that we do or we issue once we finish the investigation. So we have a negotiated disposition. So the negotiated disposition is a document that displays, what we substantiated, the violations that we've concluded on as an agency. We present that to the respondent. We have a discussion with the respondent about what we've written in there in the terms, and they have a choice on whether to sign and negotiate a disposition and agree to the violations that we have listed in there, or they can reject it and we can move to another step. So most of the time in my experience, I felt like once we got to the negotiated disposition, if we presented everything clearly and had a solid investigation and made sure we were on point with everything, that 9 times out of 10, the individual, their hands would be tied and they pretty much would have to settle for the negotiated disposition. Now, we can fluctuate a little bit on the numbers. We can negotiate on the number if they felt like it was too high. We might be able to negotiate and settle on a number. That's completely up to the attorneys and the director to agree on that number with the respondent. So most of the time they actually will sign that, in my experience. If they don't, we stay in communication with them and go back and talk to them and see if it's things that we can actually change to get them agreed to the negotiated disposition. But you still have those difficult individuals that you deal with in DC government. So they might say, I still don't feel like I did it regardless of what you had. So we end up going to the next step, which is a show cause hearing. So we'll have a show cause hearing. We'll allow the individual to get counsel if they would like, and show up. It's kind of like a little personal hearing that we hold between the respondent, their counsel, the investigator, attorney in our office, and the director. So it's kind of like a small hearing, and we do offer that to individuals at some points. If that doesn't work, we will go to the next step, which is a negotiated violation. I mean, a notice of violation. The notice of violation is basically a document that lists out all of the charges. That's also sent to the respondent to give them an opportunity to respond to what's in it. And usually the attorney and the director will determine a certain amount of time that they give for a response. They send it out. We wait for the respondent to return that with an explanation on what they think about the notice of violation. Um, like I said, in my experience, we haven't had many of these because we usually get it done with the negotiated disposition. But if the notice of violation is also triggering adversarial hearing, so once we send that notice of violation out, the process has already started. The board has been informed, and we are now in the process of going to a hearing since we weren't able to settle everything with the negotiated disposition. So we haven't had any hearings this year. I mean, the adversarial hearings. We have had show cause hearings, but we don't normally get to the hearing stage. But we do have those. So we also have informal admonitions. The informal admonitions are basically like warnings. So we kind of sort of found something, or a person was kind of tinkering on the line of they did it and they didn't do it, or they were unaware that they were doing that. So at that point, we'll have an internal discussion, and the director and the management team and the investigators will all decide, and agree that, okay, they didn't really mean to do that. So we'll just give them a warning. The informal admonition is just kind of like a warning for minor violations that don't look to be intentional. So we'll actually issue those in those situations. Public censures. When we first opened, I know we were pretty hot with these public censures. Those are dealing with the public officials. When we first opened, we had a lot of issues going on with certain council members. So at that point, when we first opened, the public censure thing was pretty hot for our office. But lately, I don't think we've issued one of those in a long time. So These are just some of the things that we do as far as dispositions at the conclusions of our investigations. Next slide.
Okay, so these are going to share a few of our statistics for FY 2023. This is what we closed out with last year. 110 investigations initiated, 10 negotiated dispositions, six show cause orders that amounted into the average of a fine of $3,000. And these are the type of violations that we saw, majority. So outside employment violations, misuse of government property, conflict of interest, and nepotism. Next. So post-pandemic trends. So these are a few things that we've noticed that have been trending since we returned to the office. There's been an increase in complaints alleging outside employment activity. We had those towards the end of the pandemic, and they are still coming in. There's also an increase in personal grievance reported as ethics violations. So sometimes we'll get a very, very detailed complaint, and it's pretty much personnel related. So a lot of personal grievances come through our office. We still open them up. We still look into them to determine if there is if there's a potential for any ethics allegations in them. So every complaint does still get, looked at and reviewed, despite if on its face we could tell that it's a personal grievance. The next one, locating former employees with open cases who departed the DC government during and post-pandemic. So we've had a lot of people have left to the private sector to start their own business, and we have had some challenges here and there where we can't locate former employees that are named in an ethics complaint. So that has been a little challenge for us. Again, we do have resources that help us locate them, but sometimes even those resources are not completely up to date. So therefore, that's been giving us some challenges here and there. There's also been a decrease of in-person complaints since, we were closed, the office, our front desk, we were all working remotely, right? We were never closed. We were all working remotely. We were taking complaints via email, online, and phone. So a lot of the in-person complaints have slowed down significantly. However, we are back in full force. So there is someone here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So if you did want to drop off a complaint, we are here to take it. Next.
I'm sorry, we're having some technical issues over here. So that was basically our presentation. We have a few questions. So I'm going to ask Kevin to open the mic so you can unmute everyone. I think the first question we had was from Miss Melinda Church. It says, please expand on what order do you follow? Melinda, can you let me know exactly what you mean by your question?
Subordinates even more readily than their ethical actions.
When you have an unethical boss that is always trying.
Ms. Church? Okay. I'll go on to the next question. Next question.
To be an effective ethical leader, it means at least two things.
All right, Kevin,
First,
can you mute everybody?
effective ethics of their leaders. Importantly, leaders' unethical actions.
I'm still muted. Kevin, can you unmute Miss Melinda Church, please, so she can answer a question?
Okay, so the next question is by Gabby. It says, apologies. Oh, okay. Does BEGA notify the accused individual's agency director of the investigation at any point during the process? The answer is no, unless they have been identified as a person that might have information that could be helpful or useful to our investigation. So unless they are called in as a witness, we do not notify the agency director. And even if they were a witness in our case and providing information that's useful to the investigation, they wouldn't be notified of the outcome of the investigation unless it's a negotiated disposition. You know, we post all those, but those are public. But they wouldn't be told what the outcome of it is if it wasn't, you know, dismissed at the end of it all.
Ms. Church, can you type in your?
I just did.
Oh, I'm
did.
sorry.
I did. Can you hear me now?
I
Oh,
can hear you now.
you can hear me now.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
My first question was dealing with the order. In terms of, you had mentioned when you first started, you follow some orders. What is that based on in terms of your procedure of how you follow the order to determine whether or not there is a valid case versus not?
Okay, so so usually when we get our complaints in, like Ileana disclosed earlier, we get them all different types of ways, via phone, email, online, through our portal, walk-ins, all different types. So when we get the complaints, we all sit down at our investigations meeting. We go through the complaints, and at that point, you know, we kind of bounce everything off of each other. Everybody gives their input on what they think about it, and based on the facts, and we kind of compare it to try to identify if it's actually a violation of the code of conduct, which is chapter 18, which is what we go by. So chapter 18 of the DPM is kind of what we follow. So we try to identify if it's actually a violation of anything in chapter 18. And if we do, then at that point, we'll make a determination, or the director will make a determination to turn that complaint into a preliminary. Now, if we don't, now, if we can't find any clear violation of chapter 18, but we still think that there's something wrong there, we'll identify an agency that we think has jurisdiction over what's being alleged. So at that point, internally, we'll close the case, but we'll also refer it to another agency. So we'll reach out to another agency, say, hey, we got this complaint. It has stuff in it that we really can't touch, but we think it would fall good under your agency, so we'll send it over to them.
Okay.
So we'll do that.
Go ahead. In terms of technicality issues, say for an example, during the COVID, a lot of us did not get the proper directions of how to handle cases that were pending. And we maybe, say for an example, forgot to have interview with one of the counselors prior to meeting with you all.
Okay.
So would that be considered a technicality?
So when you say interview with one of the counselors, what you mean?
One of our, you know, how we have to interview with one of our people in our agency before it's elevated up to you guys to determine whether or not it's the case.
So that's not how we determine it. If it's something that's internal that's going on at your agency, we have nothing to do with that. All of our processes are in-house, and it's based on what we get from that complaint, and we start everything internally. Now, I know that at some points when we're doing investigations and we might have something that's parallel, that's running with an internal investigation that's going on at your agency or at the individual's agency, but we have nothing to do with that. I know sometimes some agencies have explained it in a way to where the person feels like they're being investigated and it's just one investigation. The agency might have decided that it was a violation, so they sent it to us to look at, right? But at the same time, the agency will start looking into it themselves. So whatever's going on at that agency, that's an internal investigation that's being handled by that agency. We're only going on the based on the referral that the agency sends to us. So we start our own investigation,
Mhm.
and we run ours separate from whatever internal investigation that's going on in that agency. Because most of the time, whatever's going on in the agency is going to involve a personnel matter. So we don't have jurisdiction over personnel matters. So we're not looking at the case to get into a point where we're like, okay, she violated. We want to get her. She needs to be terminated. We can't make that decision.
Got it.
So
My-
they're
and
two
my-
separate avenues.
Okay, and my final question, because I know other people have questions, is do y'all issue any cease and desist order just to, calm the complaint down, the subject matter? Do you handle that at all, or that's not something that you would actually issue by the agency, the cease and desist?
No, man, we don't issue cease and desist orders.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so I just wanted to let everybody know that we are in the process of relocating from 1 Judiciary Square. So this address is actually only going to be ours for a few more months. We are moving to 1030 15th Street, I think it is, Northwest. So I'm pretty sure when we put out our notifications, we will put an updated address in there for everybody. The hotline number will stay the same. Everything online will still be the same, beg@dc.gov. And since nobody else but Ms. Church had questions, I'm assuming that everybody that's on this